I looked outside. What did I see? A little bird. He looked at me. I lured him close. With a piece of bread. And then I smashed. His little head. The moral of the story is. You want some head. You need some bread. Right turn. Huh.
Everybody knows that the dice are loaded. Everybody rolls with their fingers crossed. Everybody knows the war is over. Everybody knows that the good guys lost. Everybody knows the fight was fixed. The poor stay poor, the rich get rich. That's how it goes. Yeah, everybody knows. Everybody knows that the boat is leaking. Everybody knows that the captain lied. Everybody got that broken feeling, like their father or their dog just died. Everybody talking to their pockets. Everybody want a box of chocolates and a long stem rose. Yeah, everybody knows. Everybody knows that you love me, baby. Everybody knows that you really do. Everybody knows that you've been faithful, give or take a night or two. Everybody knows you've been discreet, but there were so many people you just had to meet without your clothes. Yeah, everybody knows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. That's how it goes. Yeah, everybody knows. And everybody knows. Everybody knows. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. And everybody knows that it's now or never. Everybody knows that it's me or you. Everybody knows you live forever when you've gone and done a line or two. Everybody knows the deal is rotten. Old Black Joe still picking cotton for your ribbons and bows. Yeah, everybody knows. And everybody knows that the plague is coming. Everybody knows that it's moving fast. Everybody knows that the naked man and woman are just a shining artifact of the past. Everybody knows the scene is dead, but there's gonna be a meter on your bed that will disclose what everybody knows. Everybody knows that you're in trouble. Everybody knows what you've been through. From the bloody cross on top of Calvary to the beach of Malibu. Everybody knows it's coming apart. Take one last look at this sacred heart before it blows. Yeah, everybody knows.
I looked outside. What did I see? A little bird. He looked at me. I lured him close. With a piece of bread. And then I smashed. His little head.
This was a man who many say could blend in, disappear. No wonder the CIA came knocking. Like so much with Chuck, who knows? Half a century after that visit, Chuck's embroiled in the Northern Ireland peace process, albeit without anyone realising.
One time he called and I just happened to answer the phone at home and he said, "Hey Tommy, I'm in New York City. Can you do me a favor and pick me up at the train station tomorrow at 10:30? And I asked Chuck where we were going and Chuck said, "We're going to go out to Western New Jersey. Have you ever heard of a place called Bedminster?" So I said, "Yeah, I know where it is. I can get there." So we headed out that way. And when we got to the destination in Bedminster and I pulled in and the next thing I saw, there were Secret Servicemen there. And they had armed guns on them. And so I dropped Chuck off at the front, and I stayed outside with the Secret Service. An hour later, he came back out, and he said, "Yeah, I just talked to Bill Clinton. He was a pretty interesting guy." And I said, "Well, what did you talk to him about?" And he said, well, at that time, he had mentioned that he was interested in the affairs in Ireland because these people over there are having a lot of suffering is going on, and there's a lot of violence there. So
he often came into my office unexpectedly and in a shabby raincoat, and he'd open his briefcase and he'd have newspaper cuttings and he'd seem to hand them to me at random, not saying very much. It was made quite clear to me by those who minded him to maintain his secrecy. He never really directly asked me to do anything except once, and it was when the Baltic states, when the Berlin Wall coming down and the Baltic states were attempting to break free from Moscow. And he said to me, "Ed, do you know much about Estonia?" I said, "I know little or nothing about Estonia, Chuck." Well, he said, "They're a university in the second city, Tartu. Would you think of going there and forming a link with that university? I think I'd like to see the Estonian universities forming links with the West." It was still very much under Moscow's domination. I was met there by the communist leadership from Tartu, who had a rickety old Volkswagen van, which we drove through the night from Leningrad to Tartu. And I found myself in the hands of the Communist Party there and signed an agreement with the rector. But it turned out that Chuck had been helping behind the scenes to assist the people in the Baltic states who were attempting to break free from the grip of Moscow. He established in Dublin a centre to help the leadership, potential leadership from the Baltic states. And it turned out that many of those who have done wonderful work in Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania attended that centre in Dublin that Chuck set up. So in his absolutely strategic way, he made things happen, identified potential leadership, supported it and trusted it.
Well, hello and welcome to another Restore Live. Restore Live going out live on the Facebook channel. Restore Live going out to the British Unionist People's Voice. Restore Live going out to the YouTube channel and also to the Twitter channel. Now I've had a little break. I've had a break for a week. Batteries recharged and ready to go. They say that a break is the best thing for any man. And well, yeah, I think it is. I really, really think it is. So this evening we're here to talk about the irony of what it is that I've been watching from afar that has been happening here in Belfast, Northern Ireland, just over the past week, culminating, I think, in today or maybe it's not finished yet, but well, it may go on. But we learned a lot. We learned a lot over the past week. So what I'm asking right now for people to do is, as per usual, if you would like to share this channel, share out the stream far and wide, share it to your nearest and your dearest, share it onto your own Facebook channels. If you're on Facebook, share it to, well, closed groups, open groups, wherever you can, anywhere where you think that people may want to hear something that they haven't actually heard before. So share this channel, give us a like, give us a love, give us a share. If you're here for the first time, what I would like you to ask you to do would be to leave a comment in the live chat. Please do that, because again, you won't be disappointed this evening. Well, because of what we do, people keep giving, people keep coming, keep giving, keep exposing, keep showing things that people haven't actually pieced together. And this evening, I have to say, well, we've got, well, something I think that everybody knows, but yet, well, according to a person, well, he thinks that no one knows. So what we're going to do is that we're going to start by doing what we do. We're going to play a short video clip. And in this short video clip, I want you to listen, and listen very, very carefully to what it is that this BBC presenter is actually saying. And we play this for a reason. We play this to pick it apart. We play this to get a few words at the end of what this lady has said. And then what we want to do is that we want to actually piece with what it is that's been happening today in Belfast, Queen's University, specifically in Belfast. And we want to piece together with the irony, the rewriting of history, and well, we'll come to it, the strategic way forward. Give us a like, give us a love, give us a share, do what you normally do. And well, we're here doing what it is. I think what we and the people in the background, the researchers, the people who will help with everything, well, what we do best. And I think you know that by now. So here we go. Strap yourselves in. You're in for a ride.
Intelligence could not provide a legal basis for killing suspects. Nor, as it turned out, could it be relied upon to stand up in court as evidence. In the 1980s, the IRA faced a major problem when hundreds of suspects were arrested and effectively interned. The police were acting on information from insiders they referred to as converted terrorists. On the streets, they were known as supergrasses. In 1983, the IRA killed a law lecturer a few weeks after he defended the scheme.
An informer or a supergrass is the ideal weapon for breaking open organised crime.
Edgar Graham, who was also a unionist politician, was shot on the street outside his university. We've obtained an intelligence summary from the time. It gives no evidence but sheds light on how some understood the IRA to operate, and says knowledge of the operation would have been restricted and cleared at the highest level, almost certainly by Adams.
The irony in what it is that we're going to be talking about this evening is just a few days ago, perhaps yesterday, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, one Chris Heaton Harris. He praised two people, and those two people were, well, Martin McGuinness and Gerry Adams. He praised two people in a place in Belfast, Queen's University. He praised them for their efforts in creating peace. That's what they created, according to Chris Heaton Harris, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. They created peace. I've heard a phrase that comes to mind would be the arsonist now in charge of the fire brigade, or the arsonist wanting to become involved with the fire brigade because it was, I don't know, was it lucrative? Was it the right place to be? Was it because of the power? Edgar Graham, a unionist politician. Well, let's play it again. Let's listen to what the BBC reported. Here we go.
Intelligence could not provide a legal basis for killing suspects. Nor, as it turned out, could it be relied upon to stand up in court as evidence. In the 1980s, the IRA faced a major problem when hundreds of suspects were arrested and effectively interned. The police were acting on information from insiders they referred to as converted terrorists. On the streets, they were known as supergrasses. In 1983, the IRA killed a law lecturer a few weeks after he defended the scheme.
An informer or a supergrass is the ideal weapon for breaking open organised crime.
Edgar Graham, who was also a unionist politician, was shot on the street outside his university.
So Edgar Graham was shot in the street, as you'll just see here, outside Queen's University in Belfast. And the BBC Spotlight programme had obtained files suggesting, let's play on.
We've obtained an intelligence summary from the time. It gives no evidence but sheds light on how some understood the IRA to operate, and says knowledge of the operation would have been restricted and cleared at the highest level, almost certainly by Adams.
So let's for a moment just take that off our screen. Let's yet again ask people to share this out, to tag people into the live chat, to share it to Facebook, closed groups, open groups, whatever it is that you can. Give us a like, give us a love, give us a share. That helps propagate what it is that we're doing here. So we have a man called Adams who was responsible right from the top of the IRA for, I have to play this again, we can't get it wrong. We can't be wrong. Let me go again, right at the end. Here we go. So they've obtained a file. Here it goes.
It gives no evidence but sheds light on how some understood the IRA to operate, and says knowledge of the operation would have been restricted and cleared at the highest level, almost certainly by Adams.
So British intelligence at that time, and the BBC felt confident enough to broadcast this, that it was cleared at the top of the IRA by a Mr. Adams. So yeah, we're going to take that from the screen. We understand what it is. Let me make this clear. What it is that the BBC were reporting on. So this is in the public domain. And we will play this. And we will play this because just yesterday, the day before, you got to excuse me, I have been on a break, and I want to play something else. Here we go.
Guinness, along with Gerry Adams, will be remembered for the courage and leadership they showed in persuading the Republican movement for peace. His partnership with Dr. Ian Paisley and his gracious engagement.
So, Chris Heaton-Harris, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. I'm going to say acting in a totally insensitive way. Whenever there are victims, whenever there are living victims, and what's a victim? Let's give you a definition of a victim, not the definition which is being pushed forward by some in our political system, not the definition that is being pushed forward, and that is being, I'm going to say, being overlooked, having a blind eye turned to by some in our political system. The definition of a victim is, one who wasn't out to cause anyone any harm, in terms of her troubles, that is, and one who, they were victims, say, like Edgar Graham was, for speaking his mind. And not a lot of people not a lot of people may have agreed with what Edgar Graham was saying because of the nature of what it was that Edgar Graham was saying. But the fact of the matter is that the man was a law lecturer. The man had suggested that, if they wanted to break the terrorism, and this is me paraphrasing, that the system that was in use at that time was the only way to break the grip of terrorism. And the IRA thought it best that they would shoot to death. They would kill Edgar Graham for his utterings. The British intelligence files, released after quite a long time, they suggest that it would have had to be cleared at the top of the IRA by a man named Adams. That's what's in the intelligence files. Now, forgive me for saying this, but we heard just a few days ago, we learnt of the death of Freddie Scappaticci. We understand who Freddie Scappaticci was. Freddie Scappaticci, he was a friend of, several men called Adams. One apparently a paedophile. The other, who knows? Who knows which Adams that led the IRA? We can't prove which Adams led the IRA, but certainly what the intelligence files are saying is that the murder of Edgar Graham would have had to have been cleared by Adams. Let's play Chris again here, because this is worthwhile listening to.
Martin McGuinness, along with Gerry Adams, will be remembered for the courage and leadership they showed in persuading the Republican movement for peace. His partnership with Dr. Ian Paisley and his gracious engagement.
So, praising Martin McGuinness and Gerry Adams at Queen's University for creating peace. The arsonist in charge of the fire brigade is what really springs to mind. And back to the innocent victims, the real definition of a victim is someone that was going about their ordinary business, their everyday business, minding their own business, maybe outspoken, and they met summary justice by the IRA, shot to death in the street outside Queen's University for doing his job and for being outspoken with reference to the IRA killing machine. Now, I'm going to ask a question here, and I'm going to pose something to our unionist politicians. Jeffrey Donaldson, the leaders of the DUP, most specifically the leaders of the UUP, because Edgar Graham was an Ulster Unionist. Doug Beattie, Steve Aiken, Mike Nesbitt. Here's the question. This is the question. Was this Secretary of State, was he insensitive to what happened in the street outside Queen's? A law lecturer gunned down by the IRA killing machine. Was this Secretary of State insensitive? Does Edgar Graham's family need an apology from Chris Heaton Harris? Leave your messages in the live chat. Leave your messages in the live chat. Let me know what you think. Is this man insensitive? Was this man completely out of order, celebrating Mr. Adams, celebrating Mr. McGuinness, when outside in the street, just outside Queen's University, this law-abiding citizen, a man of the law, a man who lectured in the law, was gunned down for giving his opinion based on what it was that he did. He was a lecturer in the law, and he says it was the only way to break the terrorism that was happening in that day. Should this man, Chris Heaton Harris, should he not only apologize, should he resign? Should Jeffrey Donaldson, for those of you on Twitter, should at Jeffrey Donaldson, should at the DUP, should at Doug Beattie, should at the UUP demand the resignation of this man who wants to, let me remind you of what this man wants to do.
Coax everybody into that place, that they come back into the executive, and I'd like to think I will be successful, but if...
What does beguile mean? Go and look it up in the dictionary. To charm in a deceptive way, wanting to charm and beguile. Let's play them again, just in case that we misunderstand what this unacceptable Secretary of State for Northern Ireland is saying, is doing. Walking on the grave of, well, not just the victim outside Queen's University, but every single victim that has lost their lives to the IRA killing machine. Glorifying what is found in his own British government's intelligence files, suggesting that the murder of Edgar Graham was cleared at the top of the IRA by one man called Adams. Does he need to resign? Do your unionist politicians need to call right now for his resignation? That's a question. That is a real question. To charm, to beguile people in discernment, to beguile in a deceptive way. And again, in case we misunderstand what he says, let's do this again.
Coax everybody into that place, that they come back into the executive, and I'd like to think I will be successful. But if
So he's going to coax unionists in a deceptive way to go back to Stormont when this man, Chris Heaton-Harris, Steve Baker, Rishi Sunak, those unionists, so-called unionists, those so-called conservative and unionists, who don't really get what it is that they're celebrating, what it is that they're meant to be celebrating, what it is that they're meant to be tiptoeing around, who it is that they're not meant to be offending, who that it is that they're not meant to be adding insult to the injury, to the victims that the IRA killing machine already caused. Does Chris Heaton-Harris need to resign? I've seen Steve Baker with people from within our own community smiling whilst they betray Northern Ireland. Do you know, the words of Edward Carson springs to mind. The DUP were only puppets who helped the Conservative Party cling on to power. And once in power, they kick away the ladder with no concern, absolutely no concern for those that helped them cling into power. They were puppets, absolute puppets. Now, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. Chris Heaton-Harris, who wants to beguile, charm in a deceptive way, unionists back into Stormont. Well, I believe that unionists should demand his resignation, and demand his resignation before tomorrow morning. Glorifying the arsonists as members of the fire brigade. How vile is that? How vile is that? How insensitive is that? How much adding insult to the injury, to the victims that those people created is that? How insensitive was that to do outside or inside Queen's University when just a few hours away their own British intelligence files say this? I shake my head. You know, nothing surprises anymore. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But we came here this evening to talk about irony. And the irony is this, that whilst Chris Heaton-Harris glorifies Adams, glorifies McGuinness, Edgar Graham, in his own British intelligence files, well, ultimately murdered by a man called Adams, who well, it would have had to been cleared at the top of the IRA killing machine. How insensitive is that? That's the BBC for you. The BBC produced that just last year. That's not the only irony over the past few days. There was many ironies. And you know, I was glad. I was absolutely glad that I didn't have to listen to it. So back past few days, trying to catch up. And you know, I'm almost in amazement that just when you thought that you'd sunk to the depths of depravity, just when you thought that you couldn't go any further, we have this man.
Coax everybody into that place, that they come back into the executive. And I'd like to think I will be successful, but if...
So what are we hearing today? What are we hearing on the news? What are we hearing by way of the radio channels today? People of Northern Ireland, they're being threatened with water charges, coax, beguile, charm in a deceptive way. We're hearing that, well, if that Westminster have charge, if the Northern Ireland office have charge, if the DUP do not accept, if the DUP do not accept a border between Northern Ireland, England, Scotland and Wales, if the DUP do not accept the separating of their union, the splitting of the union, the partitioning of their union, if the DUP do not accept that, if the DUP do not accept the economic union being kept in the British government and the economic union being handed to the EU and the political union being kept by the British government, if the DUP do not accept that, well, someone wants to beguile, charm in a deceptive way, that the people here will be paying water charges. What else was it we heard on the radio today? Didn't we hear that, well, university fees would be higher here in Northern Ireland than in England, Scotland and Wales? This is what we're hearing. This is what we're hearing on the via the radio channels, via the television channels, via the propaganda in the media. We're hearing that, well, that we will be beguiled, we will be charmed in a deceptive way, or the DUP will be charmed in a deceptive way, that if they do not go back to Stormont, well, the people here will suffer. And I'd like to ask this man. Let me put him up again. I'd like to ask this man, Chris Heaton-Harris. He says he's a Brexiteer. He was a member of the ERG, the European Research Group. Well, they are the Spartans of Brexit. And I would like to ask Chris Heaton-Harris, I would like to ask Steve Baker, and anyone that wants to meet with Steve Baker, I would like to ask them, do you not think that unionists in Northern Ireland have suffered enough? Do you not think that having our democracy removed is bad enough? Do you not think that as part of the 17.4 plus million people that voted for Brexit in Northern Ireland to leave the EU dictatorial Ponzi scheme, do you not think that what you're doing by wanting to beguile, charm the DUP leadership in a deceptive way, do you not think that that is adding insult to the injury that the Northern Ireland unionists have already felt as a result of, well, David Cameron? He defined the Brexit referendum. He said, one vote, there won't be any renegotiation. If the people decide to leave, the people, they'll leave. That's how the Prime Minister, the Conservative Prime Minister, defined Brexit. That's how they defined it. Only defined that whenever the people's vote was delivered, 17.4 plus million people wanting to leave the EU unaccountable dictatorial Ponzi scheme, when the people's vote was delivered upon, these people, well, they set about filling their boots. They switched sides. They took jobs. They took inducements. They took the offer of ministerial jobs. I'm trying to find words here. I'm trying to find words that explains how vile these people are, that explains how untrustworthy that these people are. Look at his face. Look at that face. He wants to add insult to the injury of the people, to the people in Northern Ireland who took part in the Brexit referendum, who voted in that referendum, who were part of the 17.4 plus million people, who has a border in the Irish Sea, who has had their democracy removed, who are treated as second-class citizens. He wants to add insult to the injury to them people. He wants to charm in a deceptive way, beguile the DUP to go back into Stormont. Well, people in Northern Ireland will never forgive the DUP or the UUP or any UP should they do such a thing. And that Chris Heaton Harris can take to the bank. I believe that all unionist politicians worth their salt tomorrow, just for the insensitivities of this charlatan, just for the insensitivities of not just this charlatan, but Steve Baker and Rishi Sunak, just for the audacity of these people to add insult to the injury to the people who has had their democracy denied, to the people who has lost their lives, glorifying the arsonists to be, well, leading members of the fire brigade. People, find the emails of the DUP, find the emails of the UUP, go to their offices, protest outside their offices, demand this man has to go. Unionism wants this man gone. And if they don't, there's something wrong with unionism. Get up of your knees, unionists, and don't take this. Well, I could find other words. Don't take this from these, well, Brexiteer, Spartan of Brexit. What a chancer. What an absolute insensitive chancer, adding insult to the injury of the victims of IRA violence over the last 25 years. I think we've finished there. I think we've said enough. I think we've done enough. Charm and beguile in a deceptive way. British intelligence files telling us who gave the go-ahead for the murder outside Queen's.
Everybody into that place.
Back again.
This, along with Jerry Adams, will be remembered for the courage and leadership they showed.
Anyway, enough said. Enough said. One of the things on that video by the BBC, full credit to the BBC, Jennifer O'Leary, the Spotlight team, we're picking it apart because we're criticizing it, and we're permitted to do so. But here's one of the things that we note in this video, and I want to play this for the purpose of people to see this. And this is something that I have noticed quite some time ago. This is something that I noticed has our whole justice system been dismantled in Northern Ireland as a result of this Belfast appeasement process, this Good Friday appeasement process? You know, once you contaminate the justice system, once you contaminate that, is that it over? Does the rat set in? And does it continue on a downward spiral to be something not consistent with what the law suggests that it should be? I mean, surely innocent victims gets prominence, are paramount when it comes to dealing with people who murdered them. Shouldn't innocent victims always be put first? I know that there's a lot of people in this country that is responsible for certain things over the time, and for whatever reasons. But what right-minded people, what right-minded person would think that, well, those that went out to kill, should they be set on a pedestal whilst the innocent victims are trampled on, whilst their graves are trampled on, whilst people add insult to the injury? I mean, that's coming from the top of our government. 25 years on, and this is what the Belfast appeasement process means. Glorifying Mr. Adams, who gave the go-ahead in the British intelligence files for the man to be murdered outside Queen's University, the law lecturer who was on the side of law and order. And yet how do I say this? I have to be very careful with my words. Let's move on. I think people get the gist of what I'm saying. So here we go. Let's move on with something else that happened over the past few days. So here we go.
The remains of Ireland's biggest department store after the biggest fire of the present bombing campaign. £10 million worth of fire, in fact. It's thought that the fire was started by a £30 bomb placed somewhere on the third floor. Secretly placed. So secretly, in fact, that security guards inside the co-op didn't believe the police when the police told them that they'd received a telephone tip-off to say there was a bomb there. So the building wasn't evacuated when the bomb went off. Fortunately, the few staff inside the building, the shop was closed for the day, weren't seriously injured. Today, the president of the co-op visited the scene of the fire and inspected what's left of the 750 jobs and what represents the co-op's biggest investment. Over 70 firemen were called to deal with the blaze, and the fire brigade expects they'll be on hand to deal with the continuing flames until tomorrow at least. But it's the loss of the jobs which prompted the strongest criticism of the provisional IRA from the chairman of the Northern Ireland Labour Party, Erskine Holmes. Perhaps, he said, a few hundred of the workers made redundant by the bombing campaign picketing outside Kevin Street could bring it home to what he called the mad bombers that the campaign must cease. The Northern Committee of the Irish Congress of Trades Unions described the fire as a crippling blow to the cooperative movement, which was owned entirely by the working people. The flames and smoke which arose from each evil deed were creating a furnace of bitterness amongst people in the north, which would be difficult to quench. But the last laconic words come from the co-op movement itself. The buildings in York Street, it said in a statement this morning, will not be open for business today.
Irony, rewriting history, strategic way forward. You gotta excuse me, my other screen has just went off. So irony, rewriting history, strategic way forward. It's just a few of the ironies over the past few days. Co-op building, York Street, Belfast. Huge big building. 54 years of age, me. I can remember visiting this particular building, Co-op, with my mom. Huge big place, over so many floors. It was a day out to go there, and to maybe get the odd little toy or whatever. In 1972, this huge investment by the Co-op Group, their largest investment to date, is what this man in the report just said. It was firebombed by the IRA. 750 jobs was the figure that I heard. And I'm just looking for some information that was sent to me by our researchers. So the irony, remember the Co-op building. Let's share our screen. Let's do something else for 2 seconds. You got to excuse me. I've got a few things on our screen here, and I've got to try to present in a proper way. So share screen. I'm going to ask people before that I share the screen. Give us a like, give us a love, give us a share. Don't forget to tag people into the live chat. You know, share out the Facebook platforms. Do, you know, if you haven't shared it yet, please do. Make people aware that this is the type of irony that is going on. This is the adding of insult to the injury of the victims that is going on. This is the rewriting of history which is going on. Not one mention, let me just say this, not one mention of this bomb in this building whenever a certain sleepy Joe Biden would have visited this building just last week at the Ulster University. That's where the new campus is, in this very building. Not one cross-reference to what the IRA done on this building. What does that say for your media? What does that say for the control of the mass media? I often look at things in a way that we see things happening in America and they ripple out right across the world, and the media in lockstep, well, they all seem to follow this homogenous line. They all seem to follow George Floyd. There's an example. I mean, that was something that happened in America. That's something that happens every day in America. George Floyd, we're talking about a few years ago. 2020, is that when it happened? Lockdowns, whenever it started. And it rippled out right across the Western world. And why do we need to import the problems from America? Why do we need to, well, if it happens in America, used to be, they would have said years ago, 10 years on, it'll happen here in Northern Ireland. Well, the difference between then and now with the internet and social media is that if it happens in America, you can be sure that it'll ripple here quite soon. George Floyd, not long after that happened on the streets of London, on the streets of Belfast, we had like crowds, mobs trying to pull down statues. They did so successfully in Bristol. They threw a statue into the lake, the river, you know, the harbour, whatever it was. I've never been there. But you know, why do we have to follow America whenever America is absolutely bonkers? So the American president, Sleepy Joe Biden, he weighs in last week. And the mainstream media, all they want to do is give a good gloss to the coverage. All they want to do is to rewrite the history. All they want to do is to cover the history. They do not want this shown. They do not want this history shown. They do not want people to know that in this building, the IRA cost 750 jobs. These people were creating jobs. Huge big place, 750 jobs in the 70s. You know, a flagship of Northern Ireland's economy. We don't have any British intelligence files telling us who done this, but no mention of this on the mainstream media last week, whenever Sleepy Joe Biden was in this building glorifying the peacemakers. Who was it said just a few days ago that, well, you know, the people, they grasped peace in Northern Ireland. I seen it in Twitter that one unionist says, hang on a minute, we didn't grasp peace. We were law-abiding citizens going about our everyday life. And people who wanted a united Ireland, people who wanted to murder and to maim under an Irish flag, who wanted to cost 750 jobs, who wanted to pull down huge employment in Northern Ireland in 1972. Well, that history has to be covered. That history has to be covered at all costs. It has to be rewritten. Let's share our screen. That's how we look at what Sleepy Joe was saying when he was in the Ulster University in this very building last week, with no talk of what happened in this building in 1972 from the mainstream media. That's why you have citizens journalists today. That's why you have people like Restore UK. That's why you have a growing number of people who are fed up with the lack of coverage from the mainstream channels, not telling the truth, rewriting the history, covering up who the arsonists were and painting the arsonists as the fire brigade, as the peacemakers, when in fact that wasn't the case, was it? So here we go. Sleepy Joe, here we go.
Of the right person for the right job at the right time, in my view. I think sometimes, especially when the distance of history, we forget how hard-earned, how astounding that peace was at the moment. It shifted the political gravity in our world. Literally, it shifted political gravity. In 1998, it was the longest-running conflict in Europe since the end of World War II. Thousands of families had been affected by the Troubles. Losses were real. The pain was personal. I need not tell many people in this audience. Every person killed in the Troubles left an empty chair at the dining room table and a hole in the heart that was never filled for the ones they lost. Peace was not inevitable. We can't ever forget that. There was nothing inevitable about it. As George Mitchell often said, the negotiations had, quote, 700 days of failure and 1 day of success. 700 days of failure and 1 day of success. But they kept going because George and all the many others never stopped believing that success was possible. And I want all of you to know, especially the young people in the audience today, and don't jump, okay? Oh, I didn't see it all the way up there. As my father would say, please excuse my back, I apologize. But all kidding aside, the American people are with you. Every step of the way, it's real. Those of you who've been to America know that there is a large population that is invested in what happens here, that cares a great deal about what happens here. Supporting the people of Northern Ireland, protecting the peace, preserving the Belfast Good Friday Agreement is a priority for Democrats and Republicans alike in the United States, and that is unusual today because we've been very divided on our parties. This is something that brings Washington together. It brings America together. I spoke about this with Northern Ireland's political leaders as well as the Taoiseach on our St. Patrick's Day celebration at the White House. It's been a key focus for me throughout my career. I remember working as a senator to see how the United States could support and encourage, bit by bit, any moves toward peace. I got elected in 1972 as a 29-year-old kid to the United States Senate. And it was just the start of it. I mean, it seemed like it was a goal that was so...
Just bear with me. So I showed that where Joe Biden would have visited the Co-op building in York Street in Belfast. I was just looking for something here. Here we go. So, standing alongside the apologies of IRA, who bombed the original Co-op building on the site, which cost, £10 million, equivalent value today, £129 million. Now, remember that figure because we're coming to another irony with reference 129 plus million, and it was talked about in the past few days. So destroying 750 jobs, that's what the IRA done in 1972 in that very building where Joe Biden here would have visited. This building here, this building.
The remains of Ireland's biggest department store after the biggest fire of the present bombing campaign. £10 million worth of fire, in fact. It's thought that the fire was started by a 30-pound bomb placed somewhere on the third floor, secretly placed. So secretly, in fact, that security guards inside the Co-op didn't believe the police when the police told them that they'd received a telephone tip-off to say there was a bomb there. So the building...
So destroying 750 jobs, that's the same IRA that carried out the greater number of 18,000 bombings, 36,000 shootings, causing the deaths of over 1,700 individuals and creating over 50,000 casualties, many with life-changing injuries. And yet, yeah, everyone embraced peace. Everyone, decided to go for peace. You know, I look through this here. No different to standing beside the supporters of September the 11th bombings. Imagine the Americans, imagine Joe Biden. How would the Americans feel? Like, I'm not talking about all Americans here, because there are some Americans that detest the Democrat Party. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, George Mitchell. I have a file here in George Mitchell that we can't read on here in case we lose our channel. So these people that are responsible for wars all around the world, wars, killing people, murdering people, here as if they're presenting for peace. So no different to standing beside the supporters of September the 11th bombings, commonly known as 9/11, carried out by the militant Islamist extremist Al-Qaeda against the United States on September the 11th, 2001. Joe Biden's hypocrisy has no bounds. Bill Clinton's hypocrisy has no bounds. Because 51 years ago, coincidentally, as the co-op bomb exploded, a previous US president was attempting to cover up his involvement in June 17, 1972, Watergate office building break-in. Late November 1995, Bill Clinton, Northern Ireland, so-called peace process. 1995, late November, 29th of November, 1995, Springfield Road, Mackey's factory. A gathering, just like the gathering in the co-op building. A gathering. Bill Clinton, picking up the peace, reach out across the divide, embrace embrace the arsonists that would set fire in a firebomb to the co-op building. Embrace them. Make peace with them. The same arsonists, by the way, in 95, who would have 2 months later, in February of 1996, placed the bomb in the Docklands, the banking area in London, causing, I say, £500 million worth of damage. Others point out that it was even more money. Placing a tactical bomb, changing what was the best opportunity for a peace process that the people of Northern Ireland ever had, changing that from a peace process into an appeasement process, which has lasted from that day in February of 1996 until today's day in April of 2023. Tactically extracting whatever it was from that peace process, not being real for peace. And still today, 25 years on, these Americans come here and big up these people. They cover up their atrocities. They are totally insensitive to the fact that people lost their lives from where they're talking, that people lost their jobs, that a huge investment in 1972 in the co-op building was destroyed by the very same IRA terrorists that these people are glorifying. People who have murdered people in 2015. People who still gather information likely to be of use to terrorists. People who, maybe learn this through their informers. Dennis Donaldson. Wasn't it said that Dennis Donaldson, well, he was an informer. He admitted being an informer. He skipped off. He went to Donegal. He cleared off. Why? Because that, it is said that he would have broke the spy ring in Stormont, using the Sinn Féin offices in Stormont to gather information that was likely to be useful to terrorists, gathering information on prison guards. People that kept prisoners in jail, gathering information. So Dennis Donaldson, he admits this. He goes off to Donegal. Not long after, Dennis Donaldson lost his life. Who killed Dennis Donaldson? Who murdered Dennis Donaldson? Why was Dennis Donaldson murdered? Was it revenge for incriminating the people within this IRA killing machine? Was it revenge for stepping outside and daring to expose what it was that these people were doing whilst in a so-called peace process? Did it matter? Absolutely not. They had to be part of the appeasement process. In fact, they were appeased. They were appeased. They were appeased. They were appeased again. And yet we have some unionist politicians. And it's not over. You know, Doug Beattie, just a few days ago, according to BBC Radio Ulster, I don't have the clip. We're looking for the clip. I hope we get the clip. But according to BBC Radio Ulster yesterday morning, Doug Beattie suggesting that, well, it's anti-democratic not to allow the people that are using the power in Stormont to destabilise Northern Ireland. They say that they are willing partners for peace, that they want to be part of a process which caters for all people. Michelle O'Neill, she wants to be a First Minister for all people, First Minister for all. How can that be? When, well, let's look for one particular thing. How can that be? How can Michelle O'Neill be a First Minister for all whenever she would suggest, for example, that young Michelle Bird, Shanklebomb, 23rd of October, 1993, that the murder of young Michelle Bird was justified, that there was no alternative to the murder of young Michelle Bird. Isn't that very thing, the very thing that she said, that there was no alternative, is that not against the ministerial code? And if it's not against the ministerial code, who wrote the ministerial code? Doesn't that ministerial code need to be updated? How can anyone share power with such a thing, with such a vile killing machine? How can any unionist, Doug Beattie, how can you suggest that you want to go into Stormont to allow those people to continue on with the destabilisation of Northern Ireland? How can you suggest such a thing? Have you no integrity? Have you no thoughts for how people would think about you? What about Edgar Graham's family? Gerry Adams, Martin McGuinness, they're the heroes. They're the heroes of the peace. Whenever it says that, well, according to the British intelligence files, you just seen it, it was published on the BBC, that one Adams at the top of the IRA would have given the authority to murder that man who was going about his business, who was a law lecturer, and who was suggesting that something needed to be done about the terrorist killing machine in 1972. You see, again, people would look at us, people would look at me, people would say, why, roll with the peace. You're being told you've been, I'm going to say you've been bombarded, and I'm glad that I wasn't being bombarded with that for the past week, but you have been bombarded with military grade propaganda in the past few weeks. Like you were in 1993 going forward, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, until they got this Belfast appeasement process over the line. You were being bombarded that, well, it's for the children, it's for the peace, it's for the betterment of the entire community, blessed be the peacemakers, all of those things. You were being told that well, people should embrace each other. Let me put something out into the public domain here. But, I would have been for peace. I'm totally for peace. I want to reconcile with nationalists, Catholics, people that don't want to hold this country to ransom. I want to, I want to live in a country which is free from political terrorism. A lot of people think people that would be airy-fairy folk that would follow the UUP. Some people, maybe even from within the unionist community, that might think because they're being bombarded with this military-grade propaganda by the Northern Ireland office and well, the world's media, the mass media, remember that word, the mass media, you're being bombarded with it. You've been bombarded with this propaganda that the peace process is good, that the arsonists are actually the fire brigade, well, with no mention of the victims that they created and this is the most unpalatable thing, is that whilst that these people, whilst that the promoters of these people, whilst that the system that promotes these people, whilst that the Good Friday Agreement, which puts these people on a pedestal, whilst that this 25 years anniversary, who has consistently glorified and put these people on a pedestal in places in where that just outside the doors or in the very building, as we showed you in the co-op, that this very killing machine, which still holds the people of Northern Ireland to ransom, well, whilst they are glorified, well, no mention of the victims that they created or the things that they've done. And that, to me, people, that is absolutely wrong. And if you think I'm wrong for saying that, I don't know how to convey any other message other than that this is a one-sided process, that the Belfast Agreement, it is a disguise. It was built for appeasement, swindle and lies. The pieces of farce, the IRA guns are still there. And the fact of the matter is, since 1996, February of 1996, a bomb, a tactical bomb in the Docklands, the pieces of farce, the IRA guns are still there. And Rishi Sunak, Chris Heaton-Harris and Steve Baker and London is afraid of another bomb scare. And that is the fact of the matter. Those who terrorized in the past terrorize in the present. Terrorism doesn't have to be physical, bombing, shooting, killing. Terrorism can be cultural. And we've seen that with the stopping of the Orange Order parades. What was it Jerry Adams said about that? That's no coincidence. Or words to that effect. Terrorism doesn't have to be physical. It can be cultural. Terrorism can be psychological. And in order to keep the terrorists who continue to hold this country to ransom in place as part of this process, in order to, as Chris Heaton-Harris would have said, in order to beguile the DUP back into the system, into this appeasement process, and with the appeasement process, well, we've learned that it is continuing. It has continued. It continues today. It has worked from 1996 right through to 2023, 25 years on, from the signing of the Belfast Agreement from 1998. What has changed in 25 years? Nothing has changed. What do you expect to change in the next year? What do you expect to change in the next week, the next month? What do you expect to change? You know, are you going to continue to put your hands in the same fire and continue to get burnt? Or are you going to draw a line? Are you going to say, enough is enough? No further. Not one more inch. This is where we stand. We can do no other. So demand. This is what I'm asking unions to do, is to demand. Absolutely demand. Be no part of a process in where that you are joining the other team to score goals against that which you claim to represent. Be no part of that process. So going forward, the irony the rewriting of history and the strategic way forward. Again, I'm going to ask people to leave a message in the live chat. We're finishing very shortly. Leave a message in the live chat. Again, give us a like, give us a love, give us a share. Tag people. Tag people. Share this out because people need to see this. People need to understand that, well, you know, get up off your knees, unionism. Unionism as a whole. Get up off your knees. Doug Beattie, what is it that he says? You know, let's take the separation of our country. Let's agree with the border at Larne, at Belfast at one point. Let's split our union down the middle. Let's give half to the EU, the economic governance of all trade here in Northern Ireland. Let the British government keep the political union. What was Doug Beattie said? I remember he said it a long time ago, as if he knew what was going to happen. Well, I'm going to say, of course he knew, because he was the man that put it in place, according to his own words, in 2019. What was it he says? I am a constitutional unionist. I am not an economic unionist. That's what he said. That's what he said. Who does Doug work for? Doug is not working for the people in Northern Ireland. Doug is not working for his constituents. Doug is not working for the people of Portadown. Doug is working for the so-called national interest. Doug is, well, a warrant officer. Well, a typical warrant officer, given his instructions by British military, by the MOD, and implementing those instructions no matter how those instructions would actually turn out. That's what Doug does. That's how Doug was trained. Doug doesn't work for unionism. Doug doesn't work for unionism. Doug works for the so-called national interest. Let's take the border in Irish and let's see how that we can change it from within the system. Look, how many times do we have to show people that this system does not work for unionism? And that unionism, whilst that we're still in a state whereby that we can make a stand, that we need to stand and we need to say, no more, no more. The appeasement process is over unless that this system becomes with a level playing field in where that everyone's rights are respected. Unless that is the case, well then, it's over with no unionist participation. That's what unionists need to do. The irony of what these people have done over the past few weeks. The rewriting of history, with not including things like outside Queen's University, that Edgar Graham was murdered, whilst that the people in charge of the organisation that murdered him, whilst they were being glorified in that very building. The Co-op building, York Street. The people that put a firebomb there, that destroyed 750 jobs, that destroyed one of the biggest investments in Northern Ireland of that day. Whilst the same IRA would have destroyed the economy here in Northern Ireland, well, Sleepy Joe comes along, and not one mention of them from the media of what happened in that building, not one mention of what happened in Lower Donegal Street, just around the corner. And don't get us started, because we looked at the vicinity, and there were several things around that time that happened in that area. No mention of that. The arsonists have to be put in charge of the fire brigade. The history has to be rewritten. The history has to favour those that continue to hold Northern Ireland to ransom, those that would continue to, in a psychological way, in a cultural way, wage their war of terrorism. What right-minded, self-respecting unionists could be participating in such a thing? So now we're coming to the close, right? What I want to do is the irony, the rewriting of history. So we're past that. We're past that stage. I want to share my screen for a moment. And I want to let you hear Rishi Sunak talking today in Queen's University. Now, I don't think that Rishi Sunak was talking about the same process that I have witnessed, that many people here in Northern Ireland have witnessed over the past 25 years. I don't think that Rishi Sunak was clued up on the same things that we are. Maybe Rishi Sunak, Chris Heaton-Harris, Steve Baker should come and get a lesson on the history of Northern Ireland from people like ourselves, from other people from around Northern Ireland that have literally witnessed this, that have known nothing but this, that are not prepared to well, whilst for peace we are, totally we are, that we're not prepared to be part of an appeasement process in where that the terrorists who continue to terrorize are glorified as the peacemakers, whilst the innocent victims' graves are trampled on, whilst the innocent living victims are continuously, whilst they continue to have insult added to their injury. I don't think Rishi Sunak was actually talking about the same peace processes as we were. I see Isabel Montgomery there. It's Rishi Sunak, John. It's Irish Sunak. Very good. But I call him the Sunak oil salesman. Let's listen to a bit of Sunak oil sales, snake oil sales. Here it is. It's coming up, and we'll come back and we'll have a chat about it in a second. So presenting my screen, sharing my screen, bear with me. So here we go.
Hello, it's 4 o'clock and we cross live to Queen's University Belfast, where the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is addressing a conference marking 25 years of the Good Friday Agreement.
Be reduced or entirely withdrawn. So, courage, imagination, and perseverance. Those qualities brought an imperfect but enduring peace to a place taught to believe no such peace was possible. So to all those who led us to that peace, including those in this hall and those no longer with us, let us take this moment to say to all of you, thank you. Now, for those of us like me who inherit this extraordinary, even intimidating legacy, our challenge today is to fulfill the promise of the work that you began. To honor your legacy, we need to create a more stable, devolved government in Northern Ireland. And that means getting the institutions up and running.
Stable government, right? Getting the institutions up and running. We've seen what happens, we've seen what happens. Let's just list a few things here. And I made a little list earlier on. This is something else that we're going to be wanting to be doing in the next few days. Stable, devolved government, getting the institutions up and running. Here we go. Just a few things. Sinn Féin, 3 years, no Stormont. Everyone has their own idea of why that we had no Stormont. I'm going to say that there was a reason for Sinn Féin putting the system down. They found an opportunity. They got an opportunity. RHI was the opportunity, but, well, we all know that Michelle O'Neill was involved in the same RHI as the DUP were. We all know that Michelle O'Neill was promoting RHI. So they found an opportunity. Why did they find an opportunity? And we're not going to stay for long. You know, let's not give too much of a history lesson. Martin McGuinness was dying. Martin McGuinness, Gerry Adams and co. had done more to defeat the Republican movement than anyone, than the British government, than the security services, than the paramilitary, the largest paramilitaries. They'd done more to defeat their organization than any people in the recent history of republicanism. And why do I say that? Well, what they did was that they split their organization right down the middle whenever that they moved forward, and they went for this so-called peace process. Now, I believe, and listen, hear me out when I say this here. I wrote a piece about it quite a few years ago when Martin McGuinness died. You see, Martin McGuinness had to stay ahead of the monster of his own creation, of Gerry Adams' creation, of the creation that was being, well, asked of them by others in Irish America, so on and so forth. And Martin McGuinness had to stay ahead of that monster because they needed that process to work. They really needed that process to work. That's why you would have seen Martin McGuinness being very friendly with, say, for example, Ian Paisley. Because Martin McGuinness and Gerry Adams and the heads of Sinn Féin, they needed that process to work more than anyone in this world. Because for that process to fail, would have been to condemn those people from within the Republican family. And who knows what might have happened to them. Would they ended up with the same fate as, say, for example, as Collins would have ended up 100 years prior. I also believe that Gerry Adams didn't take the main job because he didn't want to end up like Collins did either. I think Gerry was cute, pushing Martin McGuinness forward to be the main man in Stormont and to be the First Minister. So Martin McGuinness, he had to stay ahead of the monster of his own creation. And he desperately needed for that process to work. Hence the Chuckle Brothers, so on and so forth. Now, it came to the point whereby that Martin McGuinness was dying and the process hadn't come to fruition as they would have needed it to be. And therefore, they had to create a get out for Martin McGuinness. They had to create a legacy for Martin McGuinness. And that legacy was for him to say, well, okay, there's a bit of corruption here. RHI, we're pulling out, we can't be part of that, which carried him some favour with the wider Republican family for putting the institutions down. Now, we soon realised and we soon witnessed that it really wasn't about RHI, was it? Because as we explained, that Michelle O'Neill's department was actually promoting RHI at that time. We soon realised that, well, they found another excuse. They found an excuse in the Irish language to keep the institutions down for 3 years. They began to demand an Irish Language Act. So just a few things. Sinn Féin, 3 years, no Stormont. Sinn Féin not going back if protocol is altered. Appeasement process. This was recently. Sinn Féin, Casement Park. We'll get on to that in a second. Sinn Féin, Irish language. Welfare reforms. Spending money out of the Stormont budget to pay for things which other people in the United Kingdom were not getting things paid for. Using money of today to pay for, or using tomorrow's money to pay for today, which caught up with them in the long run. What was it that Chris Heaton-Harris said just a few days ago? Did he not say that, well, there was a huge overspend in the Northern Ireland budget, and as a result, well, there's going to have to be cutbacks. There's going to have to be money found to pay for all these things from within the Northern Ireland budget because of the mismanagement, Conor Murphy was in charge there not too long ago because of the mismanagement of the funds. People can speak English in Stormont. Huge amounts of money spent on Irish language translations from within Stormont. Huge amounts of money being put into all sorts of schemes from within communities, paying for the wants of extremists, not the needs of people here in Northern Ireland. What I'm aiming at here, people, is that Sinn Féin, well, when they ask, they get. Name me one thing that unionists have ever asked for in the past number of years that they have ever got. I can't think of one thing, not one thing. They asked for changes to the protocol. No changes are forthcoming. There was a solution which I wasn't happy with, which was the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. Conor Murphy from Sinn Féin says that if the protocol is altered as a result of the protocol bill being put in place, the Sinn Féin would walk away from Stormont. The protocol bill is scrapped. Unionists have a Windsor framework forced down their throat. No pain to Sinn Féin, all the pain to unionists here in Northern Ireland. If anyone wants to tell me that isn't an appeasement process, Casement Park, we hear over the past few days that the British government are even promoting that, well, that should be built as a national stadium to host football tournaments in the future. That, well, whilst at Windsor Park would have got 29.5 million, is around the figure that I think, whilst that Ulster Rugby in Ravenhill would have got 19 million, combined total of just under 50 million for Ulster Rugby and Irish League football and the national Northern Ireland team here in Northern Ireland, under £50 million spent for those two sports. It is suggested that Casement Park will have some, upwards of £125 million plus spent on it. I remember a professor of the Gaelic language saying to me, you know, the problem with unionism, John, is this. A guy called Kieran O'Quigley, is they don't ask for enough. Well, they don't ask for enough because they don't want to cause the Exchequer a huge amount of money. You know, they don't want to turn the English people against them for thinking, well, Northern Ireland or they've got their begging bowl out. They want to stand on their own 2 feet. It is the nationalists, the Republicans, and everyone else who is robbing the system blind from within Stormont, causing the circumstances whereby that Chris Eaton says that there's an overspend in the money that they were allocated, and it has to be taken out of next year's budget, which means that the schools are going to go short of money, the hospitals are going to go short of money, and all the needs of people are going to go short. Why? Because of the mismanagement of the people in Stormont. Naomi Long, the Alliance Party, let's have an Irish Language Act. Let's pour money into Irish language groups, Gaelic football. Look, don't even get me started on the amount of money that is being pumped into Gaelic right around this country. You know, Ballykindler. We'll talk about that in the near future, where there are ex-Ulster unionists involved in it. Huge amounts of millions being pumped into that. You know, why can't we have a system that would firstly deal with the needs of people and not the wants of extremists? And I blame our unionist politicians also for this. They are bleeding the system dry. Here we go. They are bleeding the system dry. They are causing the circumstances whereby that people in England are looking at Northern Ireland and saying, enough is enough. Let's not pay for this place. Enough is enough. Now, here's a prediction for you. Here's a prediction. Is that there's soon going to be another big bag of money being pumped into Northern Ireland from the Exchequer, from Chris Heaton Harris, from Steve Baker, and from Rishi Sunak, which will cause the circumstances in where that people in England people in Scotland, people in Wales will look at Northern Ireland and say, we would be better off without those people. We will be better off without those people. Now, should any unionist politician take part in extracting more money from the British Exchequer, well, all they are doing is putting the nails in the coffin of Northern Ireland's place from within the United Kingdom. You know, they're causing the circumstances whereby the people in England, Scotland, and Wales, well, the mass media will cause a circumstance whereby they will say that Northern Ireland is just a drain on the coffers of Westminster and of the money that should be going to England, Scotland, and Wales. So you see, this is why that I say that there needs to be safeguards, there needs to be checks, there needs to be processes put in place which doesn't allow Sinn Féin, that whilst Ulster Rugby and whilst the Irish League football get combined less than 50 million, that Gaelic GAA and Casement Park get, what, 125 million plus? Over double, just one, over double what two sets got. Should the British government not say, now I blame Chris Heaton-Harris for this, I blame Rishi Sunak, I blame the British government for this, don't blame unionists for costing this money, blame Republicans for demanding that money, blame Republicans for wanting appeased. You can't feed a crocodile. You can't feed a crocodile without the crocodile coming back for more and more and more and more. And in this instance, it's Casement Park must have £125 million plus. You know, how much more is that? Much more than the National Football Stadium got. Windsor Park, 29.5 million. You know, I think that's £100 million more going to the Gaelic rather than the national football team and Irish League football combined. You know, this is craziness, absolute craziness. And Doug Beattie supports the GAA. Doug Beattie, Robbie Butler, Robin Swan, Mike Nesbitt. Oh, let's glorify in the GAA. Let's allow them to rob the Exchequer blind. Let's allow them to permit them to cause the circumstances in where that British people, that English people, that Welsh people, that Scottish people say, enough is enough. We need to cut those drains on our society off. You see, this is what's happening within unionism. That's what's happening. And that's where our politicians need to be. Well, they need to be at. They need to be stopping. They need to be insisting that we can't be part of a process that is going to destroy the fabric of society, that is causing sectarianism in the society, which is causing, well, the circumstances in where that an IRA language act is put in place, in where that the Sinn Féin, Shane Walsh from Sinn Féin, we need to green Northern Ireland street by street using the Irish language. We need to learn from the experiences in the Basque Country, ETA, the terrorists, in where that they use the language to destabilize society. What part of what the Republicans are telling you, but Sinn Féin is telling you, Shane Walsh is a Sinn Féin activist. What part of what Sinn Féin are telling you do you not understand? Chris Heaton-Harris? Do you not understand Rishi Sunak? Do you not understand Steve Baker? What part of what Sinn Féin are telling you do you not understand, Doug Beattie? We'll have to stop. We could go on for hours about it, but I think that we've said enough. I really think that we've said enough. So we hear Rishi here talking about this wonderful piece, getting Stormont up and running again.
Now, I believe there are two tasks. First, to remove the biggest block to the institutions returning. And that's why, when I came into office, I made it a priority to fix the Northern Ireland Protocol. And we were deeply conscious of the lessons of history as we did so. That's why our aims were to balance and respect the aspirations of all parts of the community, protect the relationships between East and West as much as North and South, and persist through careful, detailed
I think he said enough. I really think that Rishi said enough there. When he wants to protect east-west the same as north-south, I don't see east-west being protected. I see a border at Larne, at Belfast, and at Warrenpoint. I see an EU customs and regulatory border. I see digital data being given to the EU on sensitive, commercially sensitive information from within the UK internal market. That's what I see being given to a foreign power, and where that they could actually, well, they could end up curding your trade, stealing your trade, diverting their trade. They could reorientate your trade towards Irish Republic, towards the EU, now that they have all the information. What type of balloon heads, bunkers are these people to do such a thing? So when it comes to the next handout here, if we see the DUP, if we see the UUP, if we see any UP, Unionist Party, suggesting that, well, it's a delivery, it's our delivery, that we brought this money, that we created this money for services, for schools, for hospitals, for whatever, I do go back and I want to put this up. Like a DUP did when they took the billion, the SNP got their credit cards out and mocked the DUP in the Houses of Commons. Billion. I can't disagree. I can't disagree. That was called a confidence and supply arrangement. And you know something? I'm not here to right now, right? And let me just say something very, very clearly. The DUP right now are the only thing between us and a so-called New Ireland. They're the only thing. And I desperately, desperately, desperately hope that they hold out. And we're going to come to a strategic way forward, and then we're going to finish. So I desperately hope that the DUP hold out. A bit of advice for the DUP next time around, like Lillian would have said here, like a DUP did when they took the billion. That was the confidence and supply arrangement. Well, I want to say this, is that should any UP, Unionist Party here in Northern Ireland, want to drain the Exchequer, facilitating Sinn Féin, IRA, the Alliance Party, the SDLP, and whoever else, to drain the system in where that the mass media, controlled by the globalists, then turns to the people in England, Scotland, and Wales, and then creates the spin in where that Northern Ireland is a drain in society, and we need to cut them loose. Should any DUP create or UUP suggest that this is our delivery, we delivered that? Well, as I say, you are putting the final nails in your own coffin by doing so. And that's what I believe that happened actually with this confidence and supply arrangement. Never agreed with it, because it was effectively blackmailing the British government, the Theresa May's government, that, well, if you want to be kept in power, we want to extract this money from you. We want to bring it back to Northern Ireland. We want to deliver for all. That's what they said. How did that work out? That didn't work out too well, because I honestly believe that that was a turning point for the Tory government towards the DUP. I believe that what they did was they really made a very, very strategic error whenever they done that. So irony, rewriting history, and the strategic way forward. So no taking money at the request of Sinn Féin, no taking money to pay for Gaelic football games. Demand that Casement Park gets the same amount as what Windsor Park got. Don't facilitate that. Don't stand with that. All you are doing is draining the Exchequer by doing that. All you're going to cause is the circumstances in where that the mass media will show Northern Ireland as a drain on the entire United Kingdom. So that's what unionists have to be careful of. Strategic way forward. There is another way. A lot of people believe that the DUP are going to wait after the council elections. They're going to, they get the vote. We've seen it from all unionist parties before. They get the vote. And then what they do is that they slowly but surely they'll enter Stormont. Now, I've heard it said from some people, good sources, I've heard it said that the DUP might actually, well, as a token of good faith, they may allow for a speaker to go into the assembly. You know, so it's Alex Maskey right now. And that's another story. Alex Maskey, who's not a speaker, still getting his wages, is he? What is it, 80 grand, 90 grand a year? Don't quote me on that, but it's money to that effect. Is he still getting his wages? But he resigned. Is that a drain in society? Is that money, if that is still being paid, is that money that should be paying towards nurses' wages, school pencils, whatever else is needed from the needs of people? Is that money that should be spent on the needs of people? Not buying Armani suits for any politician that sits in that Stormont. Armani suits does Alex Maskey have? Armani suits does Alex Maskey have? But he can certainly afford them on that wage. So the DUP, strategic error would be to facilitate Sinn Féin in draining, facilitate the Alliance Party in draining, facilitate the UUP on draining, facilitate the SDLP, People Before Profit, and whoever else would like to drain the British Exchequer. A strategic mistake would be to drain that system. And if Chris Heaton-Harris or Rishi Sunak or Steve Baker wants to give that money, the DUP need to be very, very clear that it isn't as per their request, because they don't want to drain the Exchequer. Strategic way forward for the DUP. Some people are saying to come back into the Assembly after the council elections. Now, that would be a huge mistake for the DUP to do such a thing. And let me explain why. Because the consensus is, from the people that I'm hearing, from what you're reading from social media, from what people are saying right now, you know, the consensus is that, well, we've had enough of politicians promising one thing, then going and doing another. We've had enough of them promising the earth, the moon, and the stars. Well, unionism has had enough. Unionism can't take any more. And I'll tell you why they can't take any more, because the disconnect is growing. I mean, we done the figures at the last elections, and we reckoned that there was like, you know, there's one place, and well, I can't say this for legal reasons, but we know of one particular estate, right? We know of one place in where that there was 3,500 eligible votes, and where that only 700 people would have actually come out to vote, you know, and it was a unionist area. Now you multiply that right across the broad spectrum of unionism, and you know, the last assembly elections, you know, there was a huge amount of people that didn't vote, and whilst it say Sinn Féin got 250,000, but you know, don't quote me on these figures, whilst the DUP would have got what, 220,000, or was it 180,000? The TUV took 65,000 of those votes. If they had have brought out the other 300,000 voters, if they had have brought that out, unionism would not be on the back foot. Unionism would still be in the driving seat. But why has that disconnect occurred? Why are there so many people from within unionist areas not voting? And it's because of, well, it's because of years and years of promises from politicians speaking one thing, saying one thing, and then their actions don't match up with their words. Once they get elected, they don't do the things that they said that they would do. You read their manifesto, and it looks nothing like what it is that they end up delivering. So at the next council elections, strategic way forward for the DUP would be to not buckle, to not go into Stormont, to not be part of the appeasement process, and to not, you know, to draw the line and to say that we will not be part of a process, we will not be part of an institution, we will not be part of a system that has only one trajectory, and that one trajectory being to separate Northern Ireland Unionists from their brothers and sisters in the rest of the United Kingdom, to place a border in Larne and Belfast and Warrenpoint, and to give the EU half of our union. We can't be part of a process that seeks to destroy the very thing that we claim to represent. So strategic way forward for the DUP would be to not accept this appeasement process, to get up off your knees and to fight back in a meaningful, proactive way, in a way that would be, well, that would defend, protect, and enhance Northern Ireland Unionists, the people that voted you into place. Do that, and you will be the heroes of unionism. Another way forward might be this, because if we game things out, if we look at things in the way that they're going, and you know, I'm talking to the DUP here. Where's things going? Next year we have a general election. In that general election, it is widely expected that, well, we showed you Chris Heaton-Harris. We showed you, well, Rishi Sunak, the Sunak oil salesman. We showed you what he's, well, let's not even go there. We go right across the board with the Conservative Party right now. We witnessed today, what is it they call that guy? He used to be in charge of the Conservatives. Is it Haig, they call him? Can't remember his first name. But, I mean, I looked at him today and I thought, that's neither a Conservative nor a Unionist. That man has lost the plot. In fact, there was the young guy, the young Conservative, Darren Grimes, who would have said it'd be better just get off and joining the Liberal Democrats. You know, the Conservative Party have literally, they've run out of road. They've let their voters down. They've destroyed the fabric of society. They continue to destroy the fabric of society. And they're not getting another chance. If I'm reading this right, they are not getting another chance on the levers of power for a very long time. So at the next general election, the Labour Party, nobody wants it. Nobody wants it unless that reform can, well, turn things around. But nobody wants the Labour Party in charge. But let's game things out. Let's look at things strategically. And what's going to happen if the Labour Party take charge here is that they will reverse Brexit. You make no mistake. You just do not think that the Labour Party will be in any way on the side of unionism here in Northern Ireland. So the Labour Party are seeking, the Conservative Party are going there. You know, it's a slow march towards reversing Brexit in name only. Now it's, well, it's how do we say it? It's Brexstop would be a better word, not backstop, but Brexstop, Brexit stop. That's what the Conservatives are involved in right now. But Labour will do this with gusto. They will do it very, very quickly. So if I were the DUP, and people need to listen very carefully here, but if I were the DUP, I wouldn't go into Stormont. I wouldn't disenfranchise yourself from your voters, your voter base, from the people that you need to vote for you in the future. I would not go into Stormont. I would stay out of the appeasement process. I would continue to say that this needs to be a level playing field. Otherwise, we're not going nowhere near it. Unless that border is gone, unless that the democratic right of the people of Northern Ireland is respected, we will not be anywhere near that appeasement process again. And if you do that, you will gain the respect of the people of Northern Ireland. If I were you, I would hold out. The Labour Party are coming to power when? Late next year? Don't bring Stormont back. Let Stormont hobble along there. You know, just let it do as it's doing. Let it, you know, let it go to dust. That's what to do. Don't bring it back. Let the Labour Party do what they're going to do. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Let them do what they're going to do. Now, here's the strategic way forward. Turn the people of England, Scotland, and Wales into supporters of the United Kingdom once more. Give them the give them I'm going to say, what they had in 2016, in where that they want to stand together, that they want to defeat anyone who wants to reverse the Brexit process. Create the circumstances whereby once more that this United Kingdom is in a position whereby that we can all suggest, united we stand, divided we fall. The Labour Party are going to reverse Brexit. The Conservative Party is doing it now. And I'm suggesting to the DUP, do not go back into Stormont. Do not even give a token gesture by offering a speaker. Don't give it. Don't go anywhere near that. Because strategically, it will cause a huge disconnect between the DUP and unionism here in Northern Ireland. So there we go, people. There we go. There's where we want to stop. The irony in what has happened, the rewriting of history, and the strategic way forward. DUP would be finished if they return to Stormont, could retain council seats, but won't be diminished. Okay, here, absolutely. People, we're going to finish at that. We're going to finish at that. It took a wee while to deliver that. Well, there you go. Had a rest, back, refreshed. It'd be interesting reading what the Republican trolls on Twitter are saying. I'm looking forward to that. So that's what we're here for this evening. So to recap, the irony is this. The irony is that whilst Chris Heaton Harris is glorifying Martin McGuinness and Gerry Adams in Queen's University just a few days ago, we have a BBC from the BBC archives in where that they have an intelligence document which suggested that, well, someone called Adams would have had knowledge of and would have given the go-ahead for Edgar Graham to be shot in the street outside Queen's University. Now, how insensitive is that for Chris Heaton Harris to be glorifying the arsonists, putting them in charge of the fire brigade, glorifying them as the generals in the fire brigade? For without them, we wouldn't have peace. For without them, we wouldn't have had instability in this country, because ordinary people wanted to live together. To recap, Chris Heaton Harris, he needs to go. Unionists needs to demand that he goes, that he's finished. Steve Baker and anyone else that supports him needs to go. Needs to go. Who else? Well, it seems we can't get rid of Rishi. Rishi was the chosen one. But look, listen, get up off your knees, unionism. Get up off your knees. Do the right thing. Give us a like, give us a love, give us a share. Share this out. We'll be back soon with more expose. I don't know. I'm going to be playing us out with something here. And we want to literally, we'll play us out with something. Leave your messages on the live chat. The numbers have been good right across the platforms this evening. Now, there's not very many likes, loves, or shares there, so give us a like, give us a love, give us a share. No doubt there's been a lot of people watching this here because they like to watch what we do, and then they like to criticize, they like to do... Look, that's what we're here for. You know, is there anything that you disagree with? Is there anything that you can deny that isn't in the public domain that we haven't found, that people hasn't passed to us, that we haven't been right about? Strategic way forward for the DUP? Right, wouldn't it be interesting, and this is where I smile, and I'm going to keep this clip, we're going to cut this, and we're going to see does this happen. But wouldn't it be interesting if the DUP decided to hold out and hold out and hold out and hold out to allow the Labour Party to create the circumstances in where that, well, they change the circumstances, and they will, make no mistake, they will. In other words, Brexit denied for the entire United Kingdom, and therefore Windsor Framework, well, that frame can be dismantled in where that, well, that the Act of the Union has been disapplied, Disapplied. Who remembers me saying that you can disapply a handbrake, but it was said in the Supreme Court in a way that, well, you can disapply that handbrake, but you can also reapply that handbrake. It can be disapplied, it can be reapplied. You see, the way they were explaining the Act of the Union was that, well, at some future point, it could be reinstated again. Is this the plan? Is this what Whitehall has in mind? Will Labour ultimately reverse Brexit for the entire United Kingdom? Will they deny the people's vote, the 17.4 plus million people? Will there be a need for a framework if they do such a thing? There's a lot of questions for people to answer in their own mind. If I were the DUP, I wouldn't be going anywhere anytime soon. I would be holding away from Stormont. I wouldn't be getting anywhere near it. And I would just be letting this go. It's because don't forget, DUP, you may have a council election soon. People won't forget between the time of, well, the council elections in May here and come the next general election. Who knows? If you've done such a thing, you may end up like the UUP, with no MPs, with no MPs, with no MPs. Anyway, we're stopped. We're finished. I think we've done enough. Tell us what you thought of that expose. Tell us what you thought of, well, our findings. And I can only thank the people here who would send us such things. Our findings on, well, let's do this again before we stop. Let's do this.
Intelligence could not provide a legal basis for killing suspects, nor, as it turned out, could it be relied upon to stand up in court as evidence. In the 1980s, the IRA faced a major problem when hundreds of suspects were arrested and effectively interned. The police were acting on information from insiders they referred to as converted terrorists. On the streets, they were known as supergrasses. In 1983, the IRA killed a law lecturer a few weeks after he defended the scheme.
An informer or a supergrass is the ideal weapon for breaking open organised crime.
Edgar Graham, who was also a unionist politician, was shot on the street outside his university. We've obtained an intelligence summary from the time. It gives no evidence but sheds light on how some understood the IRA to operate and says knowledge of the operation would have been restricted and cleared at the highest level, almost certainly by Adams.
McGuinness, along with Jerry Adams, will be remembered for the courage and leadership they showed in persuading the Republican movement for peace.
I think we'll leave it there. Chris Heaton-Harris needs to go. Chris Heaton-Harris should have no respect amongst unionism. All unionist politicians should demand that, well, when he would suggest that he wants to beguile unionists back into Stormont, when he wants to, well, coax people in a deceptive way, when we see that the Northern Ireland office today are suggesting, well, water charges, they're suggesting people have to now pay for their prescriptions. Now, some people didn't ask for that, by the way, but yet the system wanted to give that upon you. For the prescriptions, water charges. That kids in universities are going to have to pay more money than people in England, Scotland, and Wales. Is that charming the DUP in a deceptive way, putting the pressure on the DUP. Ask yourself a question. Why is all the pressure being put on the DUP right now? And yet when Conor Murphy would have suggested that if the protocol is changed or altered, that Sinn Féin would walk away from the process, there was no pressure put on them. That the pressure has to shift then because Sinn Féin decided that they were going to walk away, and it has to be focused, pressed hard on unionism to a point in where that constitutional change would occur in Northern Ireland. Look, any unionist wants to be part of a one-sided appeasement process. Well, are they fit to be unionists? Are they really fit to be unionists? That's a question. That's a question for everyone. Anyway, thanks very much for coming along. Leave us your messages in the live chat. We're going to finish off now by, I think, an appropriate song, a really appropriate song. We had the world's media here in Northern Ireland. We had the great and the good here telling everybody, well, you might have got burnt when you put your finger or your hands in that fire over the past 25 years. But for the next 25 years, we had Ursula von der Leyen here today, who insists that we have a border between us and England, Scotland and Wales, who's there lecturing unionists in Queen's University with Hillary Clinton, with Bill Clinton, with George Mitchell, Tony Blair. Listen, I wasn't here. I can't really talk too much about it because I didn't see it all. And am I glad that I didn't see it? But I'm sure the archive footage of what it is that they were saying will provide for some great streams here on Restore UK. Let us know what you thought of this evening's screen. And, well, as from me, good night. I'll see you all on the next one.
I looked outside. What did I see? A little bird. He looked at me. I lured him close. With a piece of bread. And then I smashed. His little head. The moral of the story is. You want some head. You need some bread. Right turn. Huh. What did I see? What did I see? A little bird. A little bird. He looked at me. He looked at me. I lured him close. I lured him close. With a piece of bread. With a piece of bread. And then I smashed. And then I smashed his little head. His little